So let me take you back a bit to you talked about losing your mom at birth. So you never got to know her.
No.
Okay.
In full fairness, I've always had a very nice family. So my father married, for what is for all effects my mother, who is from Finland, and she had 3 more children. So I have always had 3 siblings, and I've never, as a child, I got very, very upset, very emotional when people said, "But there you have brothers and sisters," because they look slightly different. Because I look Malagasy. And I was always very upset. That really upset me, because to me they were my everything. They're my siblings, and they still are. Like they'll be watching this, and I love no one more in this world, really. And so I didn't have a broken childhood at all. I had a fantastic childhood, but with this constant conflict of, or not constant, but this identity crisis that starts happening in every young person when you look very different. And when the expectations on you are different, and when society doesn't quite know how to deal with you. So, for example, with my Malagasy genes, as a child, I'm skinny. We all are.
Okay.
But that's not necessarily true in Northern Europe. And so I was fed cake in the school to fatten me up. And I had so many little things like that where I was just sort of singled out because I was slightly different. All the way to when I was looking for a job for the first time in 2006, I had good degrees from university. I wrote 127 applications. I got 0 responses. And in the moment where slightly emotional there, but the moment I denied my birthright, my name, Henry is a Malagasy name, and started using my middle name, and I started being called, I called myself Christian Henry instead, implying Christianity, right? Implying someone Western. The moment I changed the name, I changed nothing else. 50% of companies started replying. I ended up hiring with a company who had rejected me without even so much more as a line before. The only thing that had changed was the name, right? And so that difficulty, I think the identity difficulty that came over time, and that a young man, and then someone who's trying to find employment has to deal with, is a defining factor. But at the same time, I have to be very clear about the fact that I've had a fantastic family at all times. Yeah. I've always had a mother in my mind. In fact, I've had 2 in a way, and so I never wanted for anything from my family, who did their best to protect me from these kind of outside forces.
Right. Wow. We just think of racism like what applying to us, black people, anywhere we go. So I would never imagine that because when you say you're brown, over here we're like, no.
But that is so true, right?
Yeah.
Because again, there's all kinds of racism all the time. And I don't want to dwell on it too much, because I think everyone has their cross to bear. So if you're short, or if you're bald, or if you're fat, or everyone gets their fair share of trouble. Most societies in the world, women have it harder than men in many instances. But for me, the funny thing is, I was actually called the N-word and considered black in Finland, back in the north, right? Yeah. And so then here, when I come to Tanzania, people ask me if I'm Chinese. So I'm like, which one am I, right? Yeah. So black to some. Kenya, I hear I'm white a lot, especially when the weather's like this and I don't tan. And then I'm also Chinese sometimes. So I'm like, it's just we are all from somewhere, I guess.
So you're unshakable. So you're in that space in your life where you've understood, all of it, whatever it is you want to call me, that's okay, but at least you know who you are.
I don't think, none of that stings like this. It's been 10 years since those things stung. Like, even outright racism, I don't.
No. Okay. Wow. So, art school, 15 countries. So you expanded. Why'd you stop? And you can't dance, so I can't still wrap my head around it. Like, what are you doing with an art school and you can't dance?
So I can move a little bit, but not like they can, right? So it was an interesting thing. It started like, I think many companies start, like you see a problem that you want to fix, and you go after the problem, and you look at what can I do as a creative, as an entrepreneur. And so for me, there were two problems in the arts market in Finland, or in the Nordics at the time where we started. One was that dance classes were way too expensive. So they were single classes were around $25, and this is years ago, right? And so they were anywhere between, in dollars, they would have been anywhere between 15 and 25.
Okay.
And the research showed that any parent can afford a hobby for a child if it's around $8. So it was 2 to 3 times too expensive for everyone.
Yeah.
So we looked at that. And then the other thing we saw was that artists are underpaid everywhere. Not all artists, but most. And they are underemployed in the afternoons. So if you're a professional dancer, you teach in a studio, that happens in the evening. So in the afternoon, you have nothing. So I said, okay, the biggest cost factor in a dance class, there's two. One is the studio hire and the other one's the teacher. We can't cut the teacher, so we need to cut the studio. So we called 700 schools and we said, you give us your space and we're going to cut out the studio space cost, and you're going to have half-price dance classes. Wow. And many, many difficulties. We got sued by the Ministry of Education and whatnot, but the concept worked. And the artists were happy because they could teach these classes before they taught in studios at a fair salary. And the kids were happy because they could go straight after school, right? So it's an afternoon activity. And so that was the starting point. And that just kept growing. And for me personally, there were a number of things why that didn't work for me anymore. So dance team still exists, right? Yeah. So I still have my colleagues in Switzerland and Germany. But first of all, there's this whole thing about the average age of a dance group employee stays constant. Which is around 22 to 25.
Okay.
My age doesn't stay constant. so you're kind of staying in this cycle forever. And then the other thing was this, we were really hit by COVID. So we lost 95% of revenue in the first lockdown. And we had 65 employees or people finding employment through us. Not everyone's full-time, obviously, in this kind of business. And then we had 2. And so it was a harsh lesson in what society values. So the pubs opened, and at one stage the law said I can rent the National Stadium and I'm allowed to put 6 people in it, but I can go to a restaurant with 150 people, because the artists never cause trouble, right? The artists are quiet, they're gentle souls, they want to create, so they don't go out in the street and burn cars. So the mob needs beer. The artists suffer, right? So this was that experience. So that was then. Yeah. But also I saw that I have a much wider. I need to reach a wider audience, and so I'm a tech entrepreneur now with a strong sustainability twang to it. So I coach and teach around sustainability. Right. I engage here in Nairobi. I engage with sustainability entrepreneurs. So I've just met a couple wonderful people, clothing out of recycled plastics, hydroponics, sustainable farming, many. This is such an interesting region of the world at the moment. There's so much about sustainability that Kenya has to teach the rest of the world.